A very good morning to all dear student friends who have been participated in this 3 days national workshop of CSIR UGC NET JRF LS preparation in life sciences. I am Dr. Praveen Bankar, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Animal Genetics and Breeding, Postgraduate Institute of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Akola, which is a constituent college of Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University, Nagpur. Friends, in this life sciences discipline, I'm going to deliver a talk on a very important topic, that is genetic diversity. Especially, I have restricted myself as a subject matter specialist to discuss over the genetic diversity of indigenous germplasm. While understanding the concept of evolution, ecology, and genetics, a very crucial topic, today I am going to deliver that genetic diversity of indigenous germplasm. Before switching over to my talk, I would like to acknowledge my sincere thanks to Professor Humne and his entire team, which is engaged in the organization of this such kind of wonderful workshop, especially for the students. So let us see what is the genetic diversity. While going through the syllabus for the life sciences, we encounter one of the topic which is very important is genetic diversity of indigenous germplasm. While going through the previous year's papers of CSIR NET held in June or December during 2015 to 2019, I come across few areas which I feel very important to convey you all, and accordingly I prepared this presentation with two objectives. The first is to know the domestic animal diversity of India, and the second, foremost important, is to understand the conservation strategies for domestic animals. As far as the domestic animal diversity is concerned, today on the earth we have about 8 to 10 million species. Out of that, only 0.5% species are belonging to birds and mammals. And if the domestication history is considered, man has domesticated about 40 plus species for food and agriculture production. Out of that, 14 species are much relevant and economically important to the human being. And it has been witnessed that different agroclimatic or agroecological niche has imparted some unique traits to the flora and fauna. Say, for example, if we consider the evolution of today's domesticated animal from their wild form, so in this evolution phase, we have seen two drivers, that is mutation and selection, which has enforced to modify the wild form into the domesticated animals. Now, these domesticated animals have differences in their physical as well as physiological characteristic, again their capabilities and their behavior also. As far as the utilization of this domestic animal diversity is concerned, we know that the animals were primarily domesticated for the food purpose. The milk, meat, or egg from animals was the staple food in the primitive stage of human evolution. Later on, with the development of agricultural operations for plowing and for transportation, the draft power of animals were used. Later on, as the knowledge progresses, the use of domestic animals for production of fabrics, hide, use of hairs, horns, or the hollow organs were used for well-being of the human. Later on, with the knowledge of medicine, certain animal products were used for medicinal purpose also. And the very important, the use of dung for a fuel purpose, as well as some companionship with animals like a dog or like protection. These animals were used for human being. We can witness the coexistence of livestock and man through various cultural heritage, as well as in every corner of world the evolution of human being was greatly assisted with the domestication of animals. Coming to our topic, that is genetic diversity. When we say genetic diversity, we use breed as a unit to understand some correct concept. We know the traditional concept of racism, which is not encountered only in human being but also in animals. We know that the with consideration of any species of domestic animal, we used to found a variation in the population, not only with the phenotypic aspect but at genotypic level also. So that's why we today can conclude that there are certain genes which are spread over in the population, which are responsible for exhibition of the different phenotypes. Say for example the coat color in various animals, it is different from one another. Even under the one species we can found a range of coat color. So we know that any characteristic which is either we can say qualitative or quantitative in nature, so that is the net result of number of genes. The most important, those quantitative traits like milk production or meat production or body weight gain, so these are the quantitative characteristics in the livestock or animals. That means these can be measured with some metric units, and the expression of these traits, quantitative traits, is nothing but the result of the number of genes involved for expression of that trait as well as the environment. And again, today in this biotechnology era, we are able to understand that there are differences at genome level also. So now the question arises in our mind how this population has been differentiated, or how the every individual of the population is different from one another, and where does the breed originated, because every breed is different, seems to be different from one another, not only with respect to morphological aspect but some physiological characteristic also, and production reproduction traits also. So no doubt the mutation and relative isolation of population has played a vital role in evolution of the breeds, and that's why we today can define a breed as it is a homogeneous group for which a geographical separation from phenotypically similar group has led to the general acceptance of its separate identity. This was the definition given by Tyerton in 1974. Or in simple form, in simple way, we can define a breed as breed is either a homogeneous subspecific group of domestic livestock with a definable and identifiable external characteristic that enable it to be separated by visual appraisal from other similarly defined group within the same species. Food and Agriculture Organization of United States has developed a domestic animal diversity information system, that is where you will find the details of breed of domestic animals spread all over the world. As far as the domestic animal diversity in India is concerned, we have endowed with bestowed with number of breeds in various species. Today we have 17 buffalo breeds and about 50 cattle breeds which have been recognized at scientific level. Goat breeds, there are 34 goat breeds and 44 sheep breeds. We do have the breeds of horse, camel, chicken, pig, donkey, yak, duck and geese. So number of domestic animals have been documented scientifically in India. Based on the archaeology, we can place the domestic animals in the time frame in of the evolution history. So we know that the dog is considered to be the first domestic animal which was earlierly domesticated in Eurasia. About 15,000 years ago, the cattle, pig, sheep, and goat were domesticated by human being. The cattle, the cat, horse, and the chicken were domesticated quite later. Let us consider a case of origin and history of cattle. The primitive stage, the today's cattle we used to find in two form: humpless, that is Bos taurus, and humped, that is zebu or indigenous cattle Bos indicus. So both have originated from a wild cattle Bos primigenius, which has been evolved about 2 million years ago uh, in Asia. It has been proposed that around 15,000 years ago, the bifurcation between Bos taurus and Bos indicus has happened. The domestication of cattle is well witnessed with the Indus Valley civilization, which is happened in the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro region, which is shared between the India and Pakistan today. We can found the seal or the paintings on the pot in the ancient India. Considering the taxonomic classification of cattle, we know that under the class Mammalia and order Artiodactyla, the Bovidae family is the family of cattle. The buffalo, bison, antelope also comes under this family Bovidae. The subfamily Bovine has a genus Bos, which is encompassing the wild and domestic cattle. Under the genus Bos, along with the Bos indicus, that is zebu cattle, and Bos taurus, that is exotic cattle, we have Bos gruniens, that is Zuyak, Bos javanicus, that is Banteng, Bos gaurus, that is Gaur, and Bos bison, that is European bison bonasus. So we can find the members of subfamily here in this picture. Today, with the advent of recent biotechnological tools, we have able to differentiate the phylogeny of zebu cattle and exotic cattle. Considering the geographical distribution and diversity of domestic animal, say for example, with the respect of cattle diversity, we know that this India is having tropical monsoon type climate, and that's why we do have a geographical diversity also, and this diversity has enforced the expression of different phenotype and production level in the domestic animal all over the India. The Siri cattle, which is found in the hilly area of Himalaya, as well as Kherigar and Ponwar cattle found in the Himalayan foothills of Uttar Pradesh, we can observe their sustainability in such a high altitude temperate region. Similarly, the dry northwestern plain region of India, consisting of major part of Rajasthan, where there is a fragile ecosystem. The drought has affected the crop system also, and that's why the failure of human food chain by agriculture, so which has led to the selection of animals especially for milk yield. And that's why in this region we can found and that's why we can found the high yielder Gir, Sahiwal, Red Sindhi, Tharparkar and Rathi cattle has been profoundly developed in this region. The middle part of India, which is we can say Indo-Gangetic plains, where there are perennial rivers, the doabs of Ganga and Yamuna have provided the irrigated area for lush green crops, and that's why the animals which have been developed in this area are dual purpose. They are well equipped with the characteristic for high milk yield as well as good drought power for agriculture operations. In this region, we can found the Haryana, Gangatiri, Mewati. In the northern part, the Kankraj of Gujarat. In the south plateau, the Devni and Ongol, and in central region, Nimari and Dangi cattle. As far as the central part of Deccan Plateau is considered, where the climate is generally hot and humid. So there is a need of powerful bullock for agriculture operation. And that's why the breed which have been developed here are majorly the drought purpose breed. They have a massive build-up, and we can found the breeds like Amrit Mahal, Khillari, Kankata, Malavi, Harikar, Kangayam, Gaudao and Krishna Valley are developed in the Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana states. As far as the eastern and coastal regions of India is considered, we know that there is a land with a poor agricultural production. So that's why the cattle found in this area are also small and with a poor body conformation. We can very well see the Bachur cattle in the eastern part of Uttarakhand. Then the Amlacheri cattle of Tamil Nadu, Punganur cattle of Andhra Pradesh, and Vechur cattle of Kerala. As far as the genetic diversity of buffalo is considered, we know that the buffalo is well flourished in only the South Asian countries of the world, and there are two major types of buffalo are there. One is a river buffalo and another is a swamp buffalo. Both the buffalo have some differences at molecular level or at genetic level. Say for example, in river buffalo the number of chromosomes are 50, and in swamp buffalo the number of chromosomes are 48. As well as the river buffalo are quite heavily built up and larger than the swamp buffalo. Under the subfamily bovines, the Bubelina encompasses the Asian buffalo. However, the Cincercina encompasses the African buffalo. Under the Asian buffalo, Bibelus arni, which is a wild Asian buffalo, which is supposed to be the originator of Indian buffalo. Again, Bubelus mindornis, Depressicornis, and Quarlesi are the different species. Under the Cincercina, there are two types, Cape type and Congo type. Cincercina Kaffir Brachioceros are the two major types, and Cincercina Kaffir nanus is a Congo type buffalo. The archaeological evidences convey us that the buffalo has been domesticated around 5000 years ago. The Indian wild buffalo, that is Bubulus arni, is originated in Asia, which is the primitive form and of today's Indian river buffalo. Worldwide, there are 72 breeds of buffalo, out of which around 17 are present in India. And we know that the Murrah buffalo is one of the best buffalo breed, very much popular globally. However, still there are only 25% population is coming under the pure breed. 75% of buffalo population in India is of nondescript or crossbred type. And along with the 70 to 20 well known breeds, there are so many lesser known populations of buffalo. As far as the geographical distribution of buffalo is concerned, we know that the northern region of India is having Nili Ravi buffalo and Murrah buffalo, which are very much famous for their high milk yield. Also, the Bhadavari buffalo, which is famous for its fat percent, comes under this northern region. In the western region, which encompasses some part of Rajasthan and Gujarat, does have the very famous breeds like Mehsana, Banni, Surati, and Jafrabadi, which are also high yielders. The breeds of the central region are Nagpuri, Pandarpuri, Marathwadi, Chilka, and Kalahandi. Along with this, in the southern region, there are two major breeds, Toda and South Kanara. In the northeastern region, we have the only swamp buffalo, that is Manipuri buffalo. Although we are able to see number of breeds throughout the nation, in one breed, under the one breed, we can found so many strains or types or varieties also. Say for example, one of the breed of Nagpuri buffalo present in the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra does have 4 to 5 strains present in various districts of Maharashtra. In Akola, one of the strain, that is Purnathadi buffalo, is there. In Amravati district, Elichpuri, the Nagpuri or Varadi, it is in Nagpur district. In Yavatmal, it is known as Arni. In Wardha district, it is known as Gaulabi or Gaulagan. And in Chandrapur, it is well known as Chanda or Shahi. All these strains of Nagpuri buffalo have been differentiated with some phenotypic characteristic from. Considering the ovine animal genetic resources, that is sheep diversity in India, we have around 44 recognized sheep breed, and in this map we can very well identify how the sheep breed have been concentrated in the Rajasthan semi-arid region and in the South India region. In India, we are using the sheep mainly for wool and meat purpose. Similarly, we do have a diversified goat breeds where around 34 recognized breeds are there, and we are using the goats for milk purpose, for chivon, that is meat purpose, and in some goat breeds we are using for wool purpose or hair purpose. The hide of goat that is the skin of goat is also used. Similarly, we have our equine diversity. We do have seven recognized horse breed along with number of crossbreed and exotic breed present in the India. We have Bhutia horse, Kachhi or Sindhi horse, Kathiawadi, Manipuri, Marwadi, Spiti and Sanskari horse. Along with this, the donkey, which is coming under the equine family, Halari donkey, Kachhi donkey, and Spiti donkey are three major recognized breeds of equine. Considering the swine breeds, that is, pig breeds in India, we have about seven recognized breeds of pig, and most of the breeds, around five breeds out of seven, have been concentrated in the northern eastern part. Ghungru, Niang Mega, Agonda Goa, Nikobari, Zowok, Tenvivo are the major, and one of the Doom are the major breeds of India which are present along with the other exotic breeds which have been experienced in India. We know that the large white Berkshire, middle white Berkshire, Landrace, Berkshire, Tamworth, and Saddleback. Along with this, we have around 20 chicken breeds, that means breeds of poultry, and many more population of poultry birds in the which are lesser known, along with some breeds of yak and mithun. While studying the genetic diversity of such a wonderful domestic animals in India, we have to understand certain conservation issues also. And to understand these issues, we should have certain concepts to be cleared in our mindset. First of all, the concept of germplasm. Friends, germplasm doesn't mean only the live animals. It also like a breed or strain or line. It also encompasses the semen, oocyte, embryos or DNA or gene banks are there. All these things comes under the concept of germplasm. Similarly, when we understand the genetic resources, we'll have to consider the vastness of these genetic resources. Say, for example, the sheep have 26%, followed by cattle 22%, horse 14%, and goat 12%. So, here the number of breed and number of strain with respect to the total population defines the vastness of particular species. Whenever we are considering the conservation issues, we have to understand the population of particular breed. So in any population, around 87% population is of local breed. However, there are certain animals which are present in our population. These are the breeds from adjoining region of our particular geographical location. So these can be considered as transboundary breeds. Transboundary breeds means their native breeding tract is adjoining to our concerned breed. There are around 48% regional transboundary breeds and around 52% are international transboundary breeds. Say, for example, when we say regional transboundary breeds, that means for example, the Dangi cattle in Maharashtra is also having a germplasm spread over in the Dang region of Gujarat, or the Krishna Valley cattle in Maharashtra is well furnished well flourished in the neighboring Karnataka, or similarly the Devni cattle in a neighboring Andhra Pradesh. Similarly, some international transboundary breeds are there. For example, Murrah and Nili Ravi, these are also spread over the Punjab area of Pakistan, or the Sahiwal cattle also present in India and Pakistan. So these are the transboundary breeds. So considering the conservation issues, will have to consider such proportion. Similarly, the breed diversity is more important than a species diversity. So these things you will have to understand. Again, there are certain threats, or we can say causes for loss of the animal genetic resources. There are three major causes. First is the replacement of indigenous breed with crossbred. Second, intensification of our agriculture. And third is the shift of traditional livestock communities to the other activities. Another concept of risk status. So risk status defined by IUCN, which define the, or which categorize the population depending upon the number of breedable male and female in the given population. So we used to define various terms. The breed at a risk, that is either it may be critical or endangered, or the another status is extinct. Extinct means there is no cryopreserved material and no breeding male or female present over the population. The critical status indicates that the overall population of purebred animal is less than or equals to 120, is less than or equals to 100 of female breeding female are there, and less than or equals to 5 breeding male are there only. So this is the we can say a critical situation for that germplasm. And if suppose the critical such for such a germplasm, some active conservation programs are being implemented by any research institute or by any organization, then it these population are defined as a critically maintained. The another category is endangered. So endangered means when the population of breedable male and female ranging between 1000 to 1200. Say for example, when the population has the number of breeding female greater than 100 but less than 1000, or with respect to breeding male the population varies from 5 to 20. In such situation, we have to use utmost care for preservation of such germplasm. So see, this is the endangered population. So around 36% breeds are at risk worldwide, and 9% breeds of domestic animal have been extinct today. So, friends, considering the in situ and ex situ conservation method, both the methods have their own advantages and disadvantages. So, let us understand the concept of ex situ conservation by their what we can say advantages. So, the advantages of ex situ conservation can be we know that ex situ conservation we are conserving the germplasm in a with the help of certain techniques like liquid nitrogen, where minus 196 degrees Celsius temperature is attained, and we can collect, freeze and store the frozen material like semen or oocytes or embryos, and we can maintain a large scale live population with this techniques, with this approach, and that too in a low cost. So we can say the cost of maintaining the cryogenic store, this is minimal, and such banks, this cryogenic bank require a very little space, as well as only few trained technicians are required. Then a very large number of frozen animals from a larger number of population can be stored in a very single facility. Also, we can say this cryogenically preserved population, they suffer no genetic losses due to selection or drift. So a sample in a suspended animation, and that a sample remains genetically identical from time of collection to the time of use. So that integrity can be maintained. Then the effects of long-term radiation, that can be considered as a negligible. Uh, if we consider the disadvantages of this ex situ method, ex situ conservation, we can also enlist certain disadvantages. Major is that we need a technology to access the frozen population. Also, the supply of liquid nitrogen for maintaining the minus temperature, which is also a costly affair. The cryogenic store, they don't have any intrinsic value with respect to financial income, or the if the material, unless the material has been sold for research or development. So these animals or the germplasm which is kept in a cryogenic form, it is not going to produce any food or certain agriculture commodity also. So this can be a expensive luxurious item. Again, if the sampling method and collection of genetic material from limited number, the cryogenic storage can result in a initial genetic drift. So shift in a gene frequency between the original population and cryogenically conserved sample population can also be seen. Again, for this cryogenic material or the storage, there is a potential danger in cryogenic storage. So the danger from large scale loss of material due to certain accident, like certain some human error, or the power failure, or loss of the liquid nitrogen, or certain calamities like fire, flood, storm, earthquake, or war. So these can be um, in the danger. Again, these animals which are kept in a cryogenic preservation form, this population are not able to adapt through the gradual selection procedure, and that's why the changes which happens to be there in a population due to the climate change or disease background in a local or global level of environment, so that cannot be incorporated in the particular germplasm. As far as the advantages of in situ method of conservation are concerned, we know that in situ means we are applying the conservation measures in a given condition of the germplasm. Either it may be, we can say it in a field level or in a forest level, we can say. So the availability of technology and utilization of species, that can be done effectively. It require no advanced technology, and this we can apply the community based conservation measure for effective awareness and conservation. And it doesn't need any expensive material or skill or equipment. Also, for in situ conservation, the live conservation programs may survive major political or environmental upheavals, wars, climate disaster. Allow this also allow for comparative trials, research, and crossing the experiments. This allow population, the in situ conservation allows the population to adapt the changing environmental condition and endemic diseases also. With respect to the disadvantages of this in situ conservation are concerned, we can say that the lack of complete control over the many factors which are influencing the survival of individual, uh, which is leading to the genetic makeup of the concerned population. Also, it requires the land and people, which are again limited resources in certain area, certain regions. So it also dependent upon the political or financial changes. And the most important aspect is a genetic drift. So genetic drift is an inevitable feature of all living animal conservation program. Even we are taking a necessary step to minimize this problem. So selection and the resultant shift in the gene frequency within a population, this can be a possible also possible threat. Then selection of a population which is maintained in the under the modified environmental condition, that also be a one of the disadvantage. Again, this in situ conservation incur the possible threat of disease eliminating whole or substantial part or the conserved population, particularly if the conserved herd is in a single or only few linked location. So outbreak of any disease may wipe up the whole population. So diseases may also act as a major selection pressure within the population and may substantially change its characteristic. So these we can say that one of the few aspects of in situ and ex situ conservation. At the last, I would like to acknowledge my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Pitambar Humne sir and the organizing team, as well as Professor Dr. Bikane sir and Professor Dr. Kuralkar sir from my institute, who have supported me and bestowed me this opportunity to interact with you all. This is my mobile and email address for your communication. If you have any difficulty or problem, you can contact me at any time. You can email me or call me. I conclude here with a word of thank you. Thank you, one and all.